Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. Well, as most of you folks are hopefully aware, the Bobcat Fire began in the Azusa area on Saturday, September 6th of this year. When all was said and done, it burned approximately 115,000 acres of the San Gabriel Mountains, from Azusa to about Mount Wilson, from the foothills of Monrovia back to the other side of the mountains towards the high desert and the Juniper Hills area. The map here on the side shows the rough area that the fire consumed. This has been posted on our website if you care to zoom into it and play with it a little bit. It's a really large and detailed map. As you're all aware, and really the reason we're here is the fire did burn along the foothills of the city of Monrovia. We're tremendously fortunate. If you look up at the hills from your homes, you can certainly see the destruction that's taken place in the natural area there. We've had some extensive damage to our Hillside Wilderness Preserve. There's been extensive burning within the Canyon Park area and really right up to and adjacent to some of the residential interface in that area. Really tremendously fortunate within the city of Monrovia. We did not suffer any loss of life or structure. And I think this is really just a tremendous credit to the actions of our firefighters and all the resources that were brought in at all levels to fight this fire. Certainly in the aftermath of the fire over the last several months, staff's been working at a number of different things, really assessing all of our facilities, all of our public space for damage and losses as a result of the fire. And typically one of the things that you begin to look at in the aftermath of wildfires, especially in hillside areas, are burn areas and what those impacts may be for possible mud and debris flows. Since we've undertaken these assessment efforts, the city's benefited from the availability of a tremendous amount of resources from other agencies outside of ourselves. This includes Los Angeles County Flood Control District, the Burn Area Emergency Response Team, which is a part of the U.S. Forest Service, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is a part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, tremendous efforts on behalf of our city staff, as well as our vast amount of consulting engineers to really look at and assess these areas. Based on the assessments that we've done of the hillside, there's two areas of concern that we think exist in Monrovia in the aftermath of the fire. One of which is the Canyon Park area, the other of which is the neighborhood below the Ridgeside and Oakglade Drive areas, which is why we're here this evening. The assessments that took place look at the extent of the burned areas and the amount of area that is tributary to some of these drainage areas in the foothill. The map on this slide here, which we'll zoom into over the next couple of slides, kind of synthesizes the work of all of these assessments and creates a probability analysis of mud and debris flow in these areas. First, for some reference, this is the area we're really talking about. This is just a simple Google aerial. Kind of in the middle there is the top of the Ridgeside and Oakglade neighborhoods. And the expansive hillside behind it. The burn area relatively took quite a bit of this hillside area. It was stopped by the lower clamshell truck trail, kind of to the south area, spread further back into the foothills. Some of the areas of reference here are off to the right, obviously, is our Canyon Park area. Kind of in the middle there is an LA County debris basin, which is something that we'll talk about a little later on here. So just to create the reference of where the fire did take place in this area. This is a zoomed in version of the map that was generated by the Burn Area Emergency Response Team. The red area over here to the side, it's been zoomed in, shows the areas of Ridgeside and Oakglade neighborhood, as well as the Canyon Park. And based upon the color coding and the scales they've put into maps, this shows that these areas, they believe, have a probability of mud flow that would exceed 60% based on any rain activities in the area. So if we look at that area a little closer, like I mentioned, in this area here above the hillsides, circled in red, is an existing mud and debris basin that's owned and operated by the Los Angeles County Flood Control District. This basin sits atop these hillsides and it was constructed for the purpose of taking in any mud and debris that comes off of the hillsides. When we look at this area a little more closely, we see that the basin's intact, it's in great shape, it's been maintained appropriately by the LA County Flood Control Districts. The concern in this area, though, is the area on my crude graphic, and I apologize for it. The area highlighted with the yellow arrow there off to the left, this represents an additional canyon area that received extensive burning as part of the fire. Not only this canyon, but area out off and behind it. The concern that's been set forth by this area is that because this canyon has burned, as you see on the image here, it sits below the mud and debris basin. So the concern here is based upon the fire that should any mud and debris begin to originate in later rain events, it doesn't have the debris basin at the bottom of this area to capture it. As such, the probability exists that any mud and debris that's generated within this canyon could find its way out of this canyon and down into the areas of Ridgeside and Oakglade. for some additional reference, this is a Google Street Image view of this area here that sits basically at the top of Ridgeside. And what the view is looking at is a private driveway that serves approximately 3 residences that also then feeds back to a road, which is what accesses the debris basin as well as the canyon in question. So again, the concern being is that if the mud and debris were to begin to exit from that canyon, it would find its way to this road and down towards the neighborhoods. So really based upon the survey, working with the LA County Flood Control District folks, they've generated some maps here that outline the possible reach of mud and debris flow under certain storm conditions. Based on this map, as you can see, there's areas in green, yellow, and red. Those correlate to storm and debris phasing scales that are generated by the county and indicate where possible mud and debris flows could go to under certain conditions. The map does indicate, shows it tracing down the road, and that's because this map assumes the placement of K-rail and other barriers that would keep the mud and debris off of private property and into the street. LA County Public Works, again, who we have representatives on the line with us, they will generate debris flow forecasts based upon existing weather forecasts and the general conditions in the area. Typically, the way this operates is based upon weather reports and forecasting information that they've received 36 to 48 hours prior to a storm event. They'll make a forecast or a finding related to a mud and debris flow phasing. Phase 1 would be a small and isolated mud and debris flow. So correlating to that map there, that would pertain to the green area that's highlighted, where under a phase 1 condition, the assessment would be that mud and debris may impact the areas highlighted there in green. Likewise, a phase 2, which is a little more moderate at more widespread locations, could possibly generate mud and debris into the yellow area as highlighted on the map. And finally, a phase 3 is a larger, more significant widespread event. And based upon the modeling and the mapping that's been done, that could possibly generate flows that go down again into that red area there on the map. A couple of things that we'll get to a little later on in the presentation, but LA County does this forecasting, this modeling, and makes these announcements, and we'll provide some additional information later on in the presentation about how that information is made available to the public and how we plan to share that with these folks. So ultimately, based upon all of these studies and assessments, the city, the county, and the Natural Resources Conservation Service are finalizing design plans for the placement of K-rail and other mitigation measures within this neighborhood. These actions are being undertaken with the intention of protecting life and property. Our goal is to keep all mud and debris flows in the streets away from private property, where it will be easier to manage and maintain and remove, as well as protect and preserve life and property as indicated. The preliminary plans call for the placement of approximately 800 feet of K-rail in total from the upper portions of Ridgeside Drive down Oakglade Drive there to approximately the address at 800 Oakglade Drive. Again, the estimate at this point is approximately 800 feet. For reference purposes, if folks have been in town for a while may remember the aftermath of the Madison fire in 2013. After that event, the city and the county undertook a similar effort. However, it was much larger and much more expansive. After the Madison fire, their placement was almost 1 mile, just over 5,000 linear feet of K-rail, and that impacted 7 different street sections throughout the upper portions of the city. So what we're looking at here for scale, again, 800 feet on 5,000, it's a much smaller and much more contained area from a scale perspective. The placement of the K-rail will be done to follow the natural path of drainage upon the slopes and grades of road, basically being done to divert and deflect flows while protecting properties and areas. Essentially, the K-rail will be placed to keep it off of driveways, keep it out of yards, keep it on the appropriate side of streets to get it to fall appropriately. So the folks from the NRCS and from the county have been in this area with drainage, with historic drainage maps and records, with historic flood modeling, as well as GPS, GIS, and all kinds of other technology to really map and monitor the flow of the area. The idea here being is that we want to put enough K-rail to protect everything and keep the water and mud and debris flow flowing appropriately, but we don't want to necessarily overdo it. So based upon the facts and figures we have so far, we anticipate, again, approximately 800 feet of K-rail going into this area. It's worth noting that depending on the grade and the slope of the street, we may find portions of the street where there's K-rail on both sides. We may find portions of the street where there's K-rail on only one side, or particular sections of the street where there's no K-rail for a given area. Again, the K-rail would be done to deflect water away from property, direct water to existing drainage facilities that are already in that area, and put it into areas where, again, we can hopefully keep it in the street and manage and maintain it appropriately. One of the concerns that we think about when looking at K-Rail and looking at these areas is driveways. You know, certainly we understand folks need an ability to get to their homes, and frankly, under conditions like this, we want to make sure that folks are able to park on their properties more so than being in the street. As such, the plan here will not involve the placement of K-Rail in front of any driveways. We may find ourselves placing it right up to the limits too, but there will not be any permanent K-Rail placed in front of the driveways. Now, certain driveways, depending on their placement in the path of any potential mud and debris flows, as well as their placement against the street, especially for homes that may sit further back below grade, they may need additional protection to keep mud and debris out of those driveways and protect the property and the safety of the folks there. As such, on this slide here, you might see on the right-hand side is a standard plan for what is a driveway barrier. And this is something that the city would prepare and create. And it's essentially plywood sheets on posts that can be placed in and removed as needed, with the idea that if a storm event were to be coming, the barriers could be placed in front of the driveway to provide additional protection against any mud and debris flow that may be headed for the driveway, but still allow the residents the ability to come and go from their house. We believe that these sections, once they're completed, would weigh no more than 40 pounds, likely less. We'll have placed footings into the roadway to make for easy installation and removal. And simply when they're not in use, they can be placed behind the K-Rail for safekeeping should they be needed again soon. You know, really in looking at the technical side of things here, we've done a lot of engineering, we've done a lot of research and review, hydrology, but I really think that the team has really paid a lot of attention to the overall impacts that this would create. We certainly are concerned about quality of life for all the residents in the hillside. And again, the primary undertaking for this effort is to protect life and property. And so we really want to find that balance between doing what we can to protect life and property while also understanding that this is a significant impact to the folks in the area. First and foremost, everything that we've done here, again, as much as we've coordinated with public works and with technical folks, we've been in touch with police and fire. We've had them reviewing it and looking around in the area. The placement of K-Rail will absolutely be done in an effort in a manner that will not interrupt emergency response. We want to make sure that that's out there first and foremost, because it's certainly one of the critical services we here at the city provide. It's worth noting that it can take up to 5 years for the hillsides to fully recover and reduce the risk of mud and debris flows. In addition to, again, the technical placement of these, we want to make sure that we're providing continuous and uninterrupted delivery of the services that folks rely on in this area, such as trash collection, street sweeping, mail and other deliveries, the things that folks deal with every day. We want to make sure that we're doing this in a manner that doesn't impact that. We've been coordinating with Athens, we've been coordinating with folks, and based on the previous experience, we really do not anticipate any significant disruptions to those types of services. One thing that folks should be aware of, as I pointed out, there is that debris basin at the top of Oakglade and Ridgeside. That's something that is maintained by the county folks, and depending upon weather conditions, mud and debris flows, that basin does need to be maintained. So certainly it's anticipated that folks will see additional truck trips of dump trucks moving up and down that street, as well as the presence of additional heavy equipment. Again, all being done with the idea of maintenance and cleaning up of any events. So there's certainly going to be some equipment and traffic impacts of that nature for certainly the time being. In addition, during storm events, based upon the forecasting and the judgment of the county, we may see resources pre-deployed to the area, anticipate any type of cleanup. We may see trucks in place that would be used to clear out existing storm drains should they become blocked. We may see the pre-deployment of dump trucks or tractors, all things that would ultimately be used to help manage a cleanup and get things cleaned up and life back to normal as quick as possible. And really the underlining thesis to those impacts, and really again why we're here today, is our city staff's goal and plan is to communicate early and often to the folks with all of the impacts to the best that we can in the most aggressive and most impactful nature. Obviously, in any of the areas we talk about, and it's been a topic in this area before, is traffic and parking impacts. Again, as I mentioned before, just to reiterate it, all of our placement of K-Rail will be done in a manner to not interrupt emergency access. One of the things that's worth noting is due to the placement of K-Rail, the Ridgeside and Oakglade loop could possibly be cut off at the top. Again, where that area where I showed the Google Street View earlier. We're finalizing plans based upon the needed placement of K-Rail, the available resources to make some moderate moves when there's storm events or not. But it's possible that that area could be cut off for the duration of this period. What that would mean is folks may need to rely on one way in and one way out of that area. would certainly mean that every property and every person in that area would continue to maintain access to their property, but you may be required to go up Ridgeside and out Ridgeside, or up Oakglade and out of Oakglade, based upon how that all plans out. Certainly something that remains under review. The finalized plans are not fully completed yet, so once we have those, we'll be better positioned to address those concerns, but just something that we wanted to get on folks' radar now so they may start to analyze that and adjust accordingly. In terms of parking, we're continuing to investigate the impacts that this will have on parking, and certainly our intent is not to create any more disruption than this certainly already will. So some of the basic things we'll be looking at is certainly the resident-only parking permit program will be continued to be maintained in that area. Certainly we want to make sure that any parking that's available is prioritized for the residents. In addition, one of the things we'll absolutely be considering is a directive of no street parking on Oakglade during the declared storm events. We believe that by keeping vehicles off of the street, keeps them out of the way of any potential mud and debris flows. In addition, it allows uninhibited emergency access, as well as access for, the trucks and whatever materials and equipment we may need to clean up any events. So further information will come out on that, but certainly our intention would be, we think that by eliminating parking during storm events, it helps to protect the safety of the residents, but also enables us to respond accordingly. Beyond that, our intention is to go through the exercise of getting the K-rail put in place and really taking a pragmatic and thoughtful approach to how we manage parking going forward. We'd be reluctant to issue a blanket statement that just says no parking, period, because we understand the impact that that may have on folks' quality of life, but we want to see what the overall impact is of placing those materials in that area so that we can manage parking in a thoughtful and responsible manner. Kind of looking at a timeline of where we go from here. The Natural Resources Conservation Service and LA County Flood Control are working to finalize the actual engineered plans for this. Everything we've been working off of is based upon our in-field survey. They're doing some additional design and engineering work, and this will identify exactly where the K-rail will be placed, specifically in front of which homes. Kind of concurrently, while the plans are being finalized, we're coordinating with vendors to gather pricing and availability of materials and equipment to get this done. And really our overall hope is that over the next week or two, the plans kind of come together with the pricing and the availability of the materials so that we can get the plan put into action. First and foremost, the one thing we want to continue to point out is once the timeline and information on the placement of these materials is all confirmed, that it'll be shared with the residents versus some of the information, through some of the methods we'll talk about here in our upcoming communication plan. In terms of actually placing and staging the K-rail here, we anticipate that if and when this begins to take place, it should take approximately 2 to 3 days to have everything put into place. One thing we do want to note, because it has come up in discussion of late, Oakglade Drive was planned to have rehabilitation work done to it as part of our Monrovia Renewal Initiative. Certainly we understand the condition up there and we want to be responsive to the folks in that neighborhood based upon the street conditions. But looking at the placement of K-rail, the increased traffic of trucks and heavy equipment up there in terms of the situations that we may encounter in any mud and debris flows, we figure it's the best course of action is to defer paving the street at this time. We'll continue to be reactive and responsive to take care of any issues that we can in terms of potholes or disruptions, but in terms of delivering the residents an overall quality project and a road project that we can be proud of, we think it makes more sense to defer that, get through this process here related to the K-rail. And at the time that that's complete, we will come back through and do a proper repaving on that street. It would just be tremendously hard to go and pave it now to see it get tore up again by heavy equipment, K-rails and things of that nature. So we do apologize for delaying this further, but again, we think that this will in the long run provide the best overall experience for that roadway for the folks in this area. In terms of communications, I believe the chat feature is working, and if you folks have access to it tonight, we would like to see you shoot either to the group or directly to Jamie Bumia, who I think's name on the screen here is would it be City of Monrovia they'll find you, or can they find you through your name, Jamie?
They'll find me through City of Monrovia.
If you can send a message to the City of Monrovia link here in the chat, what we're trying to do is compile a list of folks in that area. When we did our initial notifications to all of you in that area, we sent mailers to all of the addresses. We also hand delivered some to the area. We'd like to build a really robust list of everybody in the area, their primary contact information, including phone and email, as well as their address, so that we can continue to deliver refined and direct communication as we work through this process. Again, we'll be really hoping to use email as our primary source of communication. But until we get that locked in and get email addresses for everyone in the area, we'll take whatever steps necessary to keep folks informed, especially as we get close to identifying a timeline. That means we'll continue to mail and hand deliver notices to all the residences in the area. If we get phone information, we'd be glad to call folks, but really our goal is to ensure that everybody is informed to the extent possible, and our team is dedicated to do whatever it takes to get out there and get that information to everyone. Our website will be updated often and frequently. This PowerPoint slide will be placed up there at the conclusion of this meeting. In addition, the Zoom is being recorded as we work through this so that that will be available to folks to watch again later for anyone who is unable to make it. In addition, on a routine and regular basis, we'll share information through the city manager's weekly update, through the city social media pages. And one of the things I wanted to mention kind of in talking about the city manager's weekly update, as well as some others, is Jamie has put together a sheet of contact information, links, trying to make sure all of the contact that you folks might need is available all in one place. On that sheet, it gives a couple of links or information on how to sign up both for the county's e-notify program, as well as for the city manager's weekly update. And what our intention is at this point is to essentially merge our efforts with the counties to ensure that folks have their information to the extent possible. All of our staff and our team here at the city will be dialed in and brought up to speed with the county's notification system, so that if they issue any storm-related notifications, we can in turn take that info and push it back out through our channels, just to ensure that folks are really getting what they're needing. So if you can send your contact information to Jamie through the chat feature on this meeting, we'll begin to build that database. We promise we won't spam you, but we think that this would be a good opportunity to provide direct and regular contact information to the folks in the impacted area. So again, here's some of the contact information here. It'll all be provided on the website. It'll all be made available to you folks however necessary. Again, my name is Sean Sullivan. Jamie is on the meeting here under the City of Monrovia sign. It's our Public Works Outreach Coordinator. Between the two of us, we'll be doing whatever we can to support our team, but to really deliver direct and continuous communication to everybody as we work through this. And we really just appreciate you being here this evening. We appreciate your interest in understanding what we're working on here. And, you know, I sincerely hope that we can find the best possible way to make this work as well and as painless for everybody involved. I think that generally concludes my presentation and overview. Again, I've got the city manager here, some of our engineering staff and folks from LA County Flood Control. And really what we'd like to do is open it up for questions and comments and any discussion points that we can here. If the chat feature is working, we can take some of the questions from there. If it's easier, Jamie, perhaps we do a raising of the hands in terms of how we want to get to folks to keep it orderly and organized.
Sean,
Yes.
Reiko Sakata here.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. I don't think we've met before, but we've talked a lot.
Yes.
I live on Oakglade, about the third house up from the beginning of it at 800.
Okay.
And I live on the east side.
Okay.
And my driveway, as well as the one to the south of me, they both go down. My house sits pretty far back from the beginning of the road, but the driveways both go down. Mine goes down further. In that case, are you saying that they might want to put those wooden barriers on if there are some storms, bad storms?
That is possible. Certainly it'll depend. Like you said, if your driveway does dip back, then it's likely that they would see that as a possible path to let mud and debris flow closer to the property. So that's where they would recommend those wooden.
Okay, you mentioned that they would be like 40 pounds, pretty heavy. I'm not that strong. If that gets put in and I need to go out, what do I need to do to get someone to remove that so I could get out?
You know, I think certainly our goal here is to work together with folks in partnership, and we'll take those situations. I don't want to say on a case-by-case basis when we find ourselves there, but if your house is identified to have one of those, we'll bring them out. We'll show them with you. We'll talk through it. And if it does prove to be an issue, we'll see what we can do to work with your neighbors or, you know, make our staff available. Certainly don't want to leave anybody out there hanging. We want to use whatever resources we can to make it as less of an impact on you as possible.
Good, thank you.
Sean, if I could just add, we wanted to provide an estimate on what it might be. based on the height, based on the width, it might be well under 40 pounds. What we're concerned about is the city as much as we would like to come and install them during a storm event, we just don't know that we'll be able to.
Yeah.
We don't know that we'll be able to get staff in. So we're asking
Mhm.
residents, we want to rely on you to make sure that they get put in place. But as we work with you to figure out exactly how they fit, how they work, I think we can make sure that residents will be physically able to get them in. I think that's going to be doable.
I will be calling you in that case.
I'm here. I'll run right up. I promise. Sean just got me my first City of Monrovia rain jacket just specifically for it.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. What else? When will you estimate these K-rails will be put in place?
That's a terrific question, and it's something we've been grappling with. Like I mentioned, there's a few moving parts. We're waiting on those final engineered plans, which are a big element to making sure that we do this and we do it right. We'll certainly need to get that back in front of the city council. Like I've said, concurrently, we're working on getting the plans and all with contractors and vendors in place, and it's starting to come together. Optimistically saying, I'm thinking it would be the early part of January, right after the holidays, I think is probably a reasonable guess. Certainly something that if it avails itself and we find ourselves in a position to come out and do it sooner, we want to be mindful of the circumstances at hand. We've been fortunate. Every time I turn on the internet and look at the 10-day weather forecast, I guess it reminds us why we all live in Southern California, as we're looking at clear blue skies and 68 or greater temperatures for the next 10 days, which we certainly don't take lightly and know that it won't last forever. And so I apologize. It's probably a long way of saying I don't have an exact timeline.
Right.
I hope it would be sooner than later.
Sure.
But kind of juggling the moving parts, it's a little tough to pin it exactly. I think some of the folks we've been talked to in terms of the materials and placing it, once they were to be given the high sign, it's something that we could have mobilized in as little as a week, if not quicker. So once we're there and ready, we think it'll come pretty quickly.
Okay, and I think I like the idea of blocking off Oakglade at the top so that people can't go up there. And we have a lot of traffic on this street, and I think they go up to a Ridgeside using our street and go around, because we just have so much traffic going up and down for a quiet street. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Mhm.
So I'd like to have that closed off, that for the duration.
Mhm.
I know others may not be happy with that, but that's my vote.
And as we roll this out, one of the things I didn't include in the presentation, we used them a lot during the fire, and I think we'll certainly use them as we can begin to make some traffic changes there, is we'll put some of those light up message signs early and often as folks are working their way up the hill. We really want to make it clear to them that if they're not a resident or if they don't have appropriate access, that there's nothing up there for them. And certainly the only thing harder than dealing with the traffic is letting them get to the top or somewhere where they can't pass and they're having to back up or turn around. And so we want to make sure that, certainly you folks will be informed because you're living in the area and getting this information, but we're going to do whatever we can to put information further out and more available to folks coming into the area who may not be there, just so they're kind of aware and on it before they get too far in.
My neighbors and I would thank you for that.
I see Conrad has raised his hand.
Kevin.
Oh,
No.
Okay. Yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. I was just concerned that, from the Madison fire, the K-rails seemed to be up for about 5 years over there.
Yes.
And it seemed to me like the first year was obviously the worst. There was some significant mud and obviously a lot of rocks too came down.
Mhm.
And then the second year seemed to be almost none to very little. And I was just wondering why they left them up so long over there.
In terms of the timeline, it's kind of at the beginning or the onset, the standard that we use is up to 5 years. And that's, again, based upon vegetation and reestablishment of the hillside. I came in later on in the stream after the Madison fire, so I can't speak specifically to the logistics there. But I think in working with Mike Miranda and in talking with Dylan, I think our approach is to monitor the situation every year. We certainly want to be careful. I don't think we can be too careful. And I can't speak to what the next couple of years look out, but we know the impact that it takes. We know the kind of toll that it'll take on those neighborhoods, and we want to be safe, but we want to monitor it. So I think it's committing to it being more of an iterative process where we're looking at the data, we're looking at the specifics, and taking it as it comes. Is there anything more tangible or concrete, Mike, that you might be able to add to that point?
Well, historically, for the county, the watersheds that are burned do take 5 years to recover significantly, to reestablish that root zone. Many times the ground cover will look nice, but the root zone really hasn't established yet. So, just because you see greenery coming back, don't have a false sense of security would be my first point. And that, sure, Sean, I think things could be revisited, in the interim, maybe, year 3 and 4 and 5 and, up to that point. But I think the first 3 years are very critical. And we would hate to be premature and pull out the K-rail and then have something, come and really cause damage to the neighborhood. That would be the worst case scenario for everybody.
And just for reference sake too, I apologize for not properly introducing him. Mike Miranda is the senior civil engineer with Los Angeles County Flood Control District, and he's the project manager from the county side and helping to execute and implement this project on our end. I think he's got over 30 years with LA County Flood Control. He worked with the setup that we had here on the Madison fire, and if I'm not mistaken, his efforts are kind of focused on this and have taken them all over the county in response to fire events like this.
Thank you, Sean. My supervisor, Mr. Ken Zimmer, he is also on the line, and Ken has a vast amount of experience and has walked the area also with us, and we appreciate the city's time and meeting with ourselves and the federal government branch to really make a better assessment of the situation.
I have a question for Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Mike, this is Philip Bordillon on the corner of Ridgeside and Oakglade. You and I met briefly a couple of days ago. You remember that?
Yes, we talked about the access way at the corner.
Right, okay. And we kind of agreed it would be prudent to put a K-rail all the way around the corner in front of our walkway.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, at 2 o'clock in the morning, it occurred to me, all these FedEx, UPS guys that come and drop packages, can they step over the K-rail? Or, given what I've learned this evening, could you put a wooden piece in front of the walkway between two of the K-rails so that vendors and just people could get through? Would that be too onerous?
Well, it's definitely something we could discuss with the city in your particular case. I think that wouldn't be a bad idea to at least have that discussion. I was aware of your driveway on Oakglade. That wouldn't provide good access.
Yeah, but the problem is, you have these guys in their UPS trucks, their FedEx trucks. We could conceivably put a sign up that's saying, deliveries, please go on the side yard on Oakglade. That's certainly feasible. And I think Nancy and I were prepared to live with that. But then this evening we learned that there are temporary barriers that can be put in and removed. And I just thought maybe that would be a better solution.
Well, typically the barriers would be for driveways only. But again, Sean and I will be happy to take a look at that more closely, and we could get back to you.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think kind of to the point about driveways and things, once we get the finalized plans and really know where specifically the K-rail is going to go, we want to have that in hand before we start talking specifics, but we're absolutely willing to come out, meet with folks individually, outline for them what the impact looks like to their property. And to your point, we want to be thoughtful in how we approach this, and if there are opportunities to make some mild tweaks to allow additional access or stuff, we're absolutely committed to doing what we can to work through those resolves. And so, you know, between Jamie and myself and all of our team here at Public Works, as well as within the city manager's office, as we get this coming together, we certainly will make ourselves available to have those discussions and address those questions so that we can look at it. It's certainly hard to do it on paper. It'd be much easier done out there in the field where we can talk about the real impacts there.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Conrad, we've been waiting very patiently. If I can jump over to you folks over there. Sorry, I can't hear you. I don't know if it's me or.
No, you guys are unmuted, but we're unable to hear you.
Do they have their volume up? The audio?
Can you hear us now?
Yes,
Yes.
no, we can.
Okay. Hi, I'm Julie Ozan. This is Conrad Ozan. And we are going to be impacted a lot. We're at 911 Ridgeside Drive, which
Okay.
is right by the gate going up to the up into the debris basin. One of my concerns is, and we'll probably talk to you individually, is about where we park, because that is an easement through our property and we park our cars there in front of that gate on that side.
Mhm.
And there was mention of the traffic problem. If the clamshell access has been a problem with parking, and if we're going to have to do a lot of parking on Ridgeside, I know there's a lot of people that go up there that aren't resident only parking, but I too believe that the signage is not well done, especially on the south side of the street there. Permit parking only. I went on a walk yesterday and the sign by the end just south of the entrance to clamshell was on the ground. I don't know how it ended up on the ground, but we have no permit parking signs on the south side of that street. So it's been a problem. So maybe we could look into that, especially if the loop is closed and people are wandering around. There's so many people looking for clamshell. There's no signage for clamshell. So we've been impacted so much on our street, having people wandering around, trying to go wherever they can to try to find hiking. So I am kind of concerned about that. The other concern between the debris basin and up to the water tank, I don't know what the flow or how you've looked at that. The impact of the house above us at the top. I don't know the address of that.
That is 915.
915. I have you looked at that? I mean, we've always had water running down, the street from up at 915 down our driveway. So I don't know. Are you going to individually help if any? I don't know if it would be sandbagging along those driveways or anything. I don't know, or if we can talk to you about that.
I think a couple of thoughts on that is, one, we've been looking at our road up above that serves the water tank, and we've got a couple ideas in mind of what we can do to prevent water from coming down from that road.
Okay.
In
Okay,
terms
great.
of the property individually, certainly the city will make available sandbags and resources like that. In addition, I believe Mike and his team from the county can provide some engineering advice whereby they
Okay.
can make contact with these folks and discuss some of those issues or elements, and can't necessarily do the work for them, but can at least provide them some guidance and some direction on what that can be done to mitigate it. So it's certainly something, we've been looking at the wider kind of swath of issues here, but certainly something that has been in the back of our mind. And as we get some contact info from you folks, we'll be glad to reach out to you as well as those other properties and give it a little more specific look at it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And to your other points about the kind of Ridgeside parking and all, that's something that The city manager's office, myself, the police department, and community services have been having some renewed discussions over. So it's certainly something that's on the radar and that we'll be continuing to look at, especially as we get into this process here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is there any other questions, comments? Dylan, was there anything that I missed, or Mike or Brad, anything else from an engineering perspective that needs to be better addressed?
I have a question if I might be able to ask.
Yes.
Hi, so I live on Oakglade Drive also, and I've not experienced mudslides in past residences. Can you give us a little bit of a better sense of what we might expect in the event of a moderate to severe storm, and what, you know, that mud flow and recovery would look like? I mean, would the streets effectively be blocked off to, you know, driving for some amount of time, or have you not experienced that with previous events?
Mike, maybe you
Yeah.
certainly have the most experience.
You know, my first real big experience was the station fire, but as recently as the Madison fire, you know, there are times, or there may be times, I should say, that when we get a significant storm, that there could be obviously water and mud and rock coming down the street. And because there's a pretty good slope, the depth of flow really shouldn't be more than knee high, but the velocity will be pretty high. And you definitely don't want to have anything such as a vehicle. Of course, you don't want anybody in the streets because, you know, dangerous things could happen. We've had cars being pushed down in La Cañada, Ocean View Boulevard specifically. And so, you know, when we issue a phase warning, and of course we coordinate with the city, and the first responders come and they visit your home and they ask you to evacuate, it would be extremely important to heed that warning because of you know, your public safety. We take it very seriously, and we want everybody to be well protected. It would be best to leave the area, you know, for a duration of time. Of course, that depends on the nature of the storm and when you know, when the streets are clear. But if you do choose to stay in place, we want to make sure that you have all your extra food and water and pharmaceuticals, if there's any. You know, because it could be a day where you might be landlocked because the streets are impassable.
Got it. So it could be something on the order of a day, but your experience has indicated the ability to clear out streets on that time scale?
Yeah, something more or less of a day.
Okay.
It's typical.
That sounds good. And the phase warnings that you mentioned would be communicated how?
Yeah, so the county has a notification system, and we have a 3-phase warning. It's kind of like a traffic light. It's green, yellow, and red. And depending on the severity, of course, phase 1 being the most common, most typical. You know, typically, if it is a phase 1 warning, not everybody would be asked to evacuate. And the impacts we feel will be isolated to the upper area. I call it the hairpin curve there at Ridgeside. And you know, we work hand in hand with the National Weather Service. We're on the phone with them in anticipation of significant storms. We look a lot at also the watershed prior to the storm. If we have a dry watershed, like right now, we have a very dry watershed. That's always a good thing. We count the number of dry days in between, and we look at the storms as they come in, as they're forecasted, and see if there's any breaks in between. And so we really do work hand in hand with the National Weather Service, and they've been fantastic folks to work with. And when we issue a phase warning, as Sean's PowerPoint had put in there, a 36 to 48-hour warning is really desirable, so that we could get all the manpower in place to execute the evacuations if necessary.
And even beyond, you know, Mike's point of if evacuations or measures like that were needed, certainly that advance warning will allow us to coordinate with the county to get the available equipment and resources in place so that if there is any activity, again, our intention is to get that area cleared as quickly as possible to allow folks to continue to come and go. Again, it'll all be about availability and positioning of resources. So we're working through those agreements with the county, so that we have an opportunity to have available what we need in those situations.
That sounds great. I guess my question is, how does that get communicated directly to the homeowners?
Okay.
Right? Is that via phone? Are we getting a knock on the door, or in such an extreme event, is there some other method?
I think we'll be kind of throwing all necessary measures at it. What we'll do is we'll post on the website, and again, if we can gather some information here through the chat, is we've come up with a list that gives all of our contact information. But the couple of key things are, again, the county has their e-notify system. I signed myself up for it today. It gives you some options. You can kind of go for the full gamut or just for the weather-related issues related to mud and debris flow. If you sign up for that, Mike, I believe, is it email and telephone or email only?
I believe it goes to your smartphone. So it goes to your email and your smartphone. And it's really quite convenient. And we do suggest to all the residents that you sign up with the county's e-notify and also with the city's notification system, because it's always good to have that redundancy. And if you get something from two different directions, you know that it's quite serious, and please take heed of those warnings. But the county's e-notify system has been in place for quite some time now.
And what we'll do is we'll take the information that's given from the county system and we'll push it out. Much like you all might have experienced during the recent fire activity, the city, did really a terrific job of keeping information available to folks on all fronts, be it social media, be it Nixle, be it the city manager's weekly update has a mailing list to it. And so I think our primary approach would be getting email addresses from the folks, especially those in the heavily impacted area. And we would mirror our mailing list for the city manager's weekly update, as well as creating a subset for the folks just in that area, so that as the county's pushing information, we would go ahead and push it via email. But we will be building phone lists. We will be building, social media pushes. I mean, really, should we get to that point, our intent is to make the information available in whatever facet we can to get it to the people that would be most impacted by it. So, I think I can't say it's just, fortunately, given the change in technology, I don't have to just say, hey, keep your phone handy because it's going to be a reverse 911 phone call or something like that. I think we have the ability and the availability of resources to get it out there as well as we can. And certainly, depending on the circumstances, it may not be technologically driven. It may be first responders or folks in the streets going door to door to, again, communicate that information appropriately.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah, and thank you for these presentations this evening. This is very, very informative. Appreciate it.
Happy to help.
Could I just add a couple comments real quick? A few things. One, some of us, like myself, weren't here during the Madison fire. And, in the Madison fire, we had a much longer stretch of street, many homes. We also had very limited drainage. There were no storm drains in the area. That created problems in and of itself. Here in this vicinity, we do have a couple intakes. Crews have been working very hard to clean those, open them, maybe even look at additional structures in front to try and keep those open. If you, on our website, which Shauna talked about earlier, browse around. There's great information about maps that shows the burn area, which hillsides are burned. There's also some videos of recent storms. So if you've never seen what some of these debris flows look like, Duarte had one a few years ago. We didn't want to show it tonight because we're not trying to incite, fear or concern, because we just don't know how much debris is going to flow. We just don't know. And so we're almost kind of waiting to see what these rains look like, but putting a plan in place for it. I think that also kind of speaks to the question about how long are the K-rail going to be in place. We don't want them there any longer than they have to be. And so we're going to constantly monitor and see, and hopefully we don't get a lot of rain. This is the only winter where we're ever praying for no rain in California. But we're going to have to see a lot of things and watch and observe and learn. We're talking about installing cameras up in the area so we can have, so the city can have eyes on it always. We're looking at, from our perspective, city staff, when we issue a green warning, when the county issues a green warning, we have on-call staff, we have police department staff, I'm getting notified. It's kind of an all hands on deck approach because we just don't know what's going to come. and we want to be there ready and waiting for whatever comes down the hill. And we sure hope it's nothing but a little bit of rain. But we want to prepare in case it's more than that. And I think, as you talk to your neighbors, please encourage them to, check out information online, prepare yourselves in the event you need to hunker down and you can't leave the house. Do you have food, water, supplies to take care of yourselves? If there's, 12 to 18 inches of mud in the road, it's going to take us a little bit of time to clear it out before we can get, an ambulance or a fire engine up there. And, that's what we're going to be making sure we're planned and ready to do. So, preparation now is really going to help us out down the road. And we can't thank you enough for being here, for asking questions, and make sure that you reach out to us anytime anything comes up. Feel free to reach out anytime.
Thank you, Dylan. Kind of one additional comment just to piggyback on top of what Dylan said is, we're giving you a very kind of engineering look, if you will, at the K-rail, because that's certainly the stuff that you'll see. And we've been involved with some of the discussions, but certainly the fire department is working on their operations plans as well, knowing that this is coming, as well as the police department. And so to Dylan's point, it really will be an all hands on deck operation for us here at the city to make sure that we're taking care of everyone up there. Kevin, I believe you raised your hand again.
Yes, I have two questions actually. Since he brought up the storm drains, we do have a lot of storm drains here on Oakglade, but if you put the K-rails up, that'll just block those, won't it?
When we were doing the survey out there for the K-rail and taking all of the GPS information, those were called out on it, and rather than obstruct the basins with those K-rail, we're actually in certain situations going to use the K-rail to divert the water towards them. So we're not going to blanket it end to end from top to bottom. It'll be a more thoughtful deployment of the K-rail to take advantage of the existing basins that we have up there. A couple of things that we've also taken in regard to that is we have done some more extensive cleaning. Those things are maintained anywhere from 3 to 6 times per year, depending on the amount of debris that's accumulated in them. We've gone ahead and done some preliminary cleaning now. In addition, as part of kind of general water quality improvements, screens are placed in those basins to collect trash and debris to keep it out of the drainage system. In a couple of the key areas, we've actually removed those screens for the season so that it doesn't create any drainage impacts in a storm event. So hopefully those basins will be operating at the best capacity possible. We actually work under a contract with Mike's team over at LA County Flood Control for the ongoing maintenance of those. And so in advance of storm situations, one of the resources that will be deployed would be jetter and Vector trucks, so that should those basins become impacted or blocked up, we have resources readily available to come in and do some cleaning on those to get those back up and running as quick as we can.
Okay. And then my next comment is probably for Mike, because he was here for Madison. Do you have an approximate acreage of the hillside that would be, I guess, directly involved in the mud flow into our area compared to what it was over there?
Yes, the acreage that is just below the Oakglade debris basin is approximately 14 acres, and the yield is thousands of cubic yards potentially that could come down, and so that really caught our attention, and that's why we're having this meeting tonight, because there is a lot of material potentially that could come through that burn canyon off to the side there.
All right. What about Madison? What kind of acreage did they have?
Well, the memo, I believe it was about 8 years ago. I would have to go back to that memorandum, but I think there was a lot more than just one street or one canyonway that brought material. I remember Hillcrest and of course Madison itself. So I don't have numbers on the Madison, but the 14-acre canyon is the canyon that is definitely caught our attention up by the Oakglade private driveway.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, I certainly I thank everybody for being here this evening and for your participation. The questions were really terrific, and we've got some notes here for some additional follow-up that we'll do. We'll continue to push stuff out on our website. My direct contact information is out there, as is Jamie's. We would be glad to take calls at any time. we'll go ahead and update the contact information, Mike, if that's all right for you folks at the flood control district, if anyone needs to get in touch with you there. You know, we're here to serve. We're here to do whatever we can to help folks through this. So I would, again, encourage you to get to the website. We'll continue to push information out there and really let us know what the best way to get in touch with you is, so that if we do need to outreach, we know how to make sure we get you. And, you know, we just, we appreciate you being here, and we will continue to work through this with you.
Absolutely, Sean. And, you know, feel free to put my my work number for those folks that might need the individual homeowner advice,
Okay.
residential advice. That's perfectly fine. They could call me and we'll set up an appointment.
Great. Yeah, I think as we get the finalized plan and understand what the overall roadway impacts look like, we'll put that out concurrently as, hey, here's the plan and how it looks. And, you know, we'll make ourselves available, but really Mike and his team are the experts and the ones that are well positioned to provide that individualized advice. So we'll make sure that you have that contact information available so that you can avail yourselves to it as needed.
Sounds good.
Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.